So as Sumana tells me that this is more or less, I think, full NTPC batch coming in from different locations, I suppose, Sumana. Sumana, in case it just...
Yes, please, yes.
Okay.
They're coming from different locations, and most of everyone is almost everyone is from NTPC only.
Okay. I think we only have a couple of our friends coming in from the other organizations as well.
Only one or two, yes, correct.
Okay, sure. So maybe before we make a start, I will just share with you as to how is it that we will go through this program, plus also the contents of the next 2-3 days. So then, even though I think the entire team is from NTPC and maybe in terms of an introduction, it would be the almost similar because all of them are from the HR fraternity. But it would be good if maybe a few of you coming in from maybe different, maybe I'm sure that there would be somebody from a gas plant, somebody might be there from a coal-based one. So maybe you can also share in case if you have some specific expectations as such. Maybe units, quite a few of you are also participants, as I understand from Sumana, in the current year. Plus, we assume that majority of you will also be supporting us as a part of going ahead with the CAHR excellence assessments as well.
Yes.
So just to share
Shiva,
with you,
we have three persons who are not from NTPC. That is Priyanka, Mehul, and Indranil. They can introduce on their own.
Yeah, maybe we will just go ahead with their introductions then initially. Or first, let me just share with them the what is it that we are going to cover for the day, so that I mean for the next 3 days, so that makes the flow of the program also clear. So based on that, they can also share their expectations and anything specific that they would like us to address. So essentially, we will be getting into somewhere close to around 5 modules, more or less. I think the core activity should be done within the first 4 modules. The last one is more something like a buffer, what we have kept for trying to get into the last portion of the scoring, etc. So essentially, today and tomorrow, that is the first 2 modules for Monday and Tuesday. One is, of course, as I said, we will skip the customary expectations since it is more of a single group that is there in large numbers, except for some 2 or 3 for other friends who have joined. We will start off with trying to get into, because since this is more of an assessor training program, initially we will talk about how do we look at excellence, how do we define excellence, and when we are trying to go out and assess any organization for HR excellence, what is it that all of us should understand in a common manner? Because many a time, why many times, but almost all times when you are going out for an assessment, depending upon the size and the complexity of the location, either it will be a team of 4 or 6 assessors who go out to do the assessments. So generally in such a scenario, each one of us will come in with our own understanding and our own definition of excellence. Then with 4 different assessors going into a 5th company, which is totally different, then it shouldn't be that we are something like the 7 blind men and the elephant. So all of us would need to have a common understanding or a perspective of what excellence is all about and how is it that we are going to assess excellence. So it is very important that we try to understand we come to a common conclusion in terms of the denominator of excellence. So we'll start off with that, and then later we will also get a little bit deeper into the 6 box, the HR excellence model. And the model what you are going through was the one that was released as a revamped HR excellence model in the year 2019. So this is more or less the second year of the revamped model being in vogue. That the model is also contemporary, forward-looking. We have also got quite a lot of new points that we incorporated as a part of the 2019 activity, when there was a core committee that went into relooking at the entire aspects of the model to make it contemporary. So we will, and there are many points which, as I said, are forward looking, but those have not been really drill down in the 2019 assessment. Slowly, our endeavor will be as we move ahead into the 2020 cycle as well as the 2021 and going forward. So, how is it that we are going to make use of many of those new points which the model has also put in? So, we will have a detailed, I would say, a drill down of all the 6 boxes. We'll go through the HR excellence, the criterion requirement, including all the bullet points, whatever are listed out. And then maybe today we might be able to go into only 1 or 2 criterion. That's what history says based on whatever coverage we have had over the last many programs. And then tomorrow we will continue with the remaining either the 3 or the 4 boxes, whatever is left out, because the model has 2 aspects of it. One we call as the enablers, and the second one what we call as the results. So the enablers we will make a start today, and then tomorrow we will complete that, and we will also get into tomorrow in terms of understanding a very important concept called as OPEL. OPEL is nothing but the tool that is used for scoring, and also not only for scoring, it is also a tool that we can use for trying to take the level of the HR processes to the next level in terms of the maturity. So that is where that will be a very integral part. And in fact, over the next 4 days, beginning from tomorrow till Friday, we will be discussing continuously about the OPEL, which is the heart of the excellence model, wherein we get into the scoring plus as well as I said, the robustness. And then in module 3 and 4, that's on Wednesday and Thursday, it is more about trying to get into the practical aspects of how do we go about trying to do the assessment. Before we do the assessment, it is very important to understand the context of the applicant and also from which sector the applicant is coming in from, the private, public sector applicant, or maybe it might be a very old legacy organization, or it might be a new age organization, because the challenge is we are assessing HR. And HR is all about cultures, it is about the way that the company thinks. And again, people are also different. So be it regions, be it geographies, be it the sectors, the HR practices are all different. So before we try to go ahead and do an assessment, understanding the context of the applicant becomes very important. So that is where we will spend some considerable amount of time. And there is also a concept called as a key factor. Key factors are the ones which are very characteristic to a particular organization. How do we make use of that for trying to do the assessment, for trying to write the feedback reports, etc.? That is something that we will try to understand on that module 3. And then all of you must have also received the case study of the BPCL, which we will make use of for trying to convert or apply whatever today and tomorrow you are going to learn. I would say the broad aspects of HR excellence, the theoretical portion of it. How do we put in practice? That is what we will try to see in module number 3, 4, and 5. And we are also going to simulate. There are going to be some exercises. We will tell you as to what is it that you will need to do. Today, there will be some pre-read which you will need to do post the conclusion of the program. And then from tomorrow onwards till Friday, you will have to do some sort of homework based on the case study. We will share with you as to how to attempt that particular exercise. Daily, you will also need to share whatever activity you have done so that we will be able to give you a feedback of how is it that you are going ahead with that case study, because it's more of an experiential program wherein you are trying to apply both the theory as well as practice. And there are 2 aspects to this in the program. The first one is what we call as an individual assessment. That is, in an individual assessment, each one of you will first get into what we call as doing a complete individual assessment from your own end. That is what is an individual assessment. Then, based on the activity, what you do and submit, we will also help you to go through what we call as a consensus activity. In a consensus, it is about different, I would say, people coming together and then trying to come to a common agreement. But in this case, since all of you are from NTPC, I'm hinting that more or less the thinking would be similar, but still all of you are coming in from, I would say, different sectors of the business, different regions. So I'm certain that there will also be some new value add that all of you will bring in into the discussions. So we'll go through the principle of consensus as well, and then post that we will start the scoring, because it is very important that when you are getting into assessments, the quality of your comments will be of utmost importance, and the sort of insights that you bring and the quality of the statements what you write will be the one which will help you to do scoring. So there will be almost on Wednesday as well as Thursday and even Friday. We will. Somebody mute the mic, please. There is a lot of noise in the background. You can unmute when you are speaking. So you can also, we will also help you to do with the scoring on both the days based on the quality of your statements. How do we go about trying to do the scoring? Why this is important is, while many of the things might be there in our mind, but we are not too very sure whether the same thing is put in as our feedback comment. The quality of the comments what we give will give us the authority to give or deduct the scores from an applicant. Because even an HR excellence applicant, when he looks at the feedback report, he will look at what is written in the report, he will look at the quality of the feedback, he will look at the gravity of the strengths and the OFIs, and then also try to recalibrate whether the scoring whatever has been given, is it appropriate or not. So that is where the importance of trying to look into the quality of the statements become very important. We will also go through that, and also certain points in terms of do's and don'ts in an assessment. What are the softer portions? What are the competencies that are required for you to be an assessor, etc. These are also some of the points that we will take you through this 5-day program. So broadly, these are the, I would say, the 5 modules. With this, maybe we will leave the floor open for all of you to share as to what is it that you would want as a takeaway. There are 2 more things. This program, while predominantly it is an assessor training program, but I would also want to share with you that the inputs and the discussions, whatever we have over here, will be going beyond the assessor portion of it. It will also help you to become a good implementer, because the concept of the OPEL, that what we are going to speak or beginning from tomorrow, as I said, that is a tool that will help you to improve the robustness of your HR processes. So it is quite possible or potential that not all of you would like to, or it might not be possible for everybody to get into the role of an assessor. But it is important that you take home the learning from this and start implementing in whichever process you are leading in HR. So take this more as an implementer come assessor program. And in case if some of you are applying, later I will also check out with Sumana. We will also share with you as to how to go about writing the position report, so that you can also put your best foot forward when it comes to preparing a position report or an application document for challenging the HR Excellence Award. So that's about the introduction, what I had about the program. About myself, my name is Shiv Kumar. Feel free to call me Shiva. And I head the business excellence vertical of the CI Institute of Quality. So my main area of work is to do with the EFQM excellence model, and also the Malcolm Baldrige quality framework, which is more of both. One is of a European one and one is the American framework. And as we know, I think in NTPC also, you have the business excellence model, which was initially, many of you were participating in the CI Exim Bank Award for business excellence. And over a period of time, you have your own NTPC model for excellence. And many of you might have also been in touch with our senior colleague and mentor, Mr. C.V. Subramaniam. I think he has always been the face for NTPC when it comes to the business excellence program. And I have around 28 years of industry experience, basically industrial production engineer and an MBA from one of the Australian business schools. Initially worked for around close to 15 years in the industry before I joined CII. This is my 14th year in CII. My main role is I'm a trainer, plus also I'm a consultant or help companies in implementing many of the aspects of business excellence, plus also HR excellence. Work across different sectors, both public sector as well as the private. Coming to the public sector, I've had the privilege of working with the likes of BEL and BHEL, plus also many units of SAIL. So these are some PSUs that have been associated with. And of course, we also work on quite a lot of the maturity as well as the non-award assessments relating to business excellence. And I've been a part of this HR excellence activity ever since 2010 when it was introduced in CII. And I've been a part of both the first version plus as well as the second and the third versions, which we slowly went about implementing based on changes in the global HR scenario. Just for your information, the latest model, what we are going to go through today, has been discussed and has been brainstormed for over 3 or 4 months with people coming in and chipping in from the CII membership. Prominent amongst those companies are people who volunteer to be a part of this exercise are from Tata Sons, from Kirloskar, from Aditya Birla, from Saint Gobain, as well as Hindustan Liver. So these were the different organizations that were a part of upgrading this, and we have considered most of the global excellence models, plus also global HR practices that were there, and some of the individual practices of many benchmark organizations that were practicing something very, very innovative in HR. So all those practices and insights have been taken into consideration in preparing this particular model, which we believe is future looking and will hold good, we would say, at least for the next 2 to 3 years moving forward. So that's about the program plus as well as the context. And with this, maybe I'll leave the floor open for a few minutes in case if you would want to share on any of the expectations on the program and something that you would want me to cover, we'll be more than happy to customize the delivery. Yes, please, you can open up your mics. Anybody who wants to share something, we'll be more than happy.
We can at least start with the introduction. If no one wants to speak, ask anything.
Yeah, Daniel, good one. That's right. Certainly, I think it will not be too very different from the TBM portion of it, because we always strongly believe and we also have a strong conviction that globally all excellence models are the same. The only thing is the Opel or the tool what we speak about is very similar to the Adley and the Lexi that you use in the TBM terminology. So it will not be too much of a difference. So not a problem, but as we go ahead, we will share with you, and I'm sure that it will be very easy for you to sync along with this program. Sure, thank you. Yes, please, anybody else?
Shiva, good morning. This is Priyanka here. I'm from Startech and we are into the BPO space.
Okay.
So So basically, and I take care of the talent management and engagement piece globally. My expectation, so basically, we had applied for this award couple of years back also, and that time I guess the model was slightly different, and we had understood, the takeaway was the radar framework. But I believe now I'm very keen to understand the revised framework that you just explained to us. So my expectation is that need to understand the framework where we can position our various HR initiatives that we are currently practicing in our organization. Number two is to identify the gaps and implement it for better understanding and approach of the entire
Certainly.
framework. Thanks.
Sure. And just for, I would say, for your comfort, Priyanka, one is earlier the tool was a radar. Radar was more of a, I would say, proprietary tool of EFChem. So we did not want to impinge on any of their global models' IP rights. So we have changed quite a lot, and that is where we came up with the acronym of OPEL. Plus, there were also quite a lot of I would say major changes that we have made in terms of the maturity. So the older one, whatever you went through, the basic, I would say the principles underlying it would still remain the same. But whatever is there inside the boxes, they have undergone a change. But it is more of, I would say the earlier model is certainly not redundant. It builds up quite a lot, and there are some new areas, and we will certainly, since both a few of the NTPC units plus as well as many of the other people over here might have also had a opportunity to be a part of the assessment in the previous years. You will clearly be able to see the differences as to where we have made those subtle changes. Thanks, Priyanka. Sure.
Thank you, Shiva. Thank you.
Yes, please. Anybody else?
Hi, Shiva. Am I audible? Mustafa here.
Yeah. Out and clear.
My question is two. One is you mentioned about business excellence model, which NTPC is already following. So how my question would be, as in how is it different from that? As in that also already takes care of HR parameters as well. Business excellence integrates those parameters. So how is it different from that? So in business sense, how does it really help? Delving so deeply into HR. One is that. And second is this whole process, is it going to be diagnostic, or is it also going to be, maybe, curative? As in, tell me simply the problems I have, or also tell me how to fix it, or, so these are the two questions I have. Thank you.
Sure. As far as the first question is concerned, we will deliberate on it as we go ahead, maybe within the next half an hour to 45 minutes. As far as the second question of yours, when it talks about either a solution or this is a diagnostic, all the excellence models are designed to be only diagnostic tools. They are not supposed to be consultative in nature. Then it becomes too very judgmental. So any model across the world, any diagnostic excellence model being followed, maybe in India, maybe in the UK, or maybe in the US, or whatever, any of these excellence models, they're all diagnostic. And as assessors, our job is only to find out, because the excellence models, when we say that they are diagnostic, let me repeat, by just following an excellence model, nobody is going to, say that, yes, all our problems are going to get solved. Not really. The excellence model is nothing but a diagnostic tool which will tell us that based on a compendium of the best practices that are available, what is it that we are doing, what is it that we are lacking in, and to what extent the maturity is less. So that is what the report is going to tell you. How to go about addressing it is what the organization should figure out. And we always tell the assessors not to be consultative, because there will always be an element of bias that the assessors would tend to share if they are supposed to be a little bit prescriptive in nature. So we always believe that the organization is the best judge based on the cultural and many other compatibility factors. The organization is best suited to choose its own way. But however, we do make a small exception for organizations which are in their very, very, I would say, early journey of the maturity. In case if things are somewhere they are not all, even the direction what they have taken is not so very great, then we tell the assessors that it is not a problem if you can afford to be a little bit prescriptive so that the organization is able to find at least the right path. So to that extent, we can be a little bit consultative, or to, if we are to assign a numeric to it, for an organization which is just at about 400 or 450, they would need some small consultative inputs in terms of setting the direction right. For an organization that is beyond 500 and 550, they are mature enough to know what works for them or what is it that they need to do. So there, the diagnostic report that the assessors are going to give is not going to be very prescriptive, even though as a part of the informal discussions with the assessor and the applicant team, somewhere there might be some point that might be shared that this is something that you may like to try, etc., but that may not come up formally and explicitly in the report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Shiva.
Hi, Shiva. Am I audible?
Yeah, Manoj.
I'm actually.
Subhadeep.
Yeah, I'm Shubhadeep. Yes, I've been working in NTPC for more than 15 plus years. And a couple of things I wanted to take away at the end of this program. Firstly, how do we insulate leadership practices from an approach to create a leadership cult? Because what we often see, especially in popular literature and blog posts, is that the emphasis becomes more towards creating or showcasing a leadership cult rather than developing true leadership practices which outlive the individual who may be the incumbent at that particular position of time. And secondly, with the influx of so much of data and emphasis on measurement, the focus somehow has got it has been taken away from true evaluation, and it has become shifted or focused upon measurement. So how do we keep evaluation at the forefront? Because in HR, I still believe that there are many things which we can evaluate, but perhaps to measure, to try to fit them into a particular matrix, that becomes very challenging. So how can we do that?
Sure. I think when we go ahead with the OPEL framework, maybe we will discuss it a little bit more. But I think metrics are extremely important while we are trying to evaluate something. But when we are trying to evaluate something, it has to be against a particular standard. But what generally where people go wrong is they try to go behind an established metric that may not work for them. So what is more important is to derive metrics that make sense to us. That is where the choice of the metric, we must not go by what everybody is following. Maybe that may not be pertinent. I think as long as those metrics are all customized to our nature of work and what we are wanting to achieve, it's absolutely fine. We will look at the appropriateness of the metrics as we go ahead in the program.
I would like to request all participants if you can switch on your video, so it will be more interactive, because you can see each other at least.
Yeah, thank you.
At least during a Q&A, you can always do that.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, Shiva. I'm Vandana with NTPC.
Yeah. Yes, please go ahead, Vandana.
Yes. So my expectation, I've been with NTPC for almost 25 years, and I'm also an internal assessor for our own business model. So my expectation for this is, as we are talking about HR excellence here, when I was just going through the supplement that you had shared, my first thoughts was these days HR has become more about boundary management. A lot of our effort goes into that. So how much of boundary management issues will be dealing with in this, and how this framework takes care of that? And the second is, as we have seen in COVID-19, also true for earlier days also, there are a lot of things that are changing very quickly, very fast, and innovation, adaptability, learning curves are becoming very steep. So how is the excellence model taking care of that kind of thing? Because we may be excellent in a few ways and maybe reaching the pinnacle of excellence, but somehow the groundwork has changed. So how this model will take care of that? Thank you.
Sure. I mean, the OPEL will address that. Vandana, as we go ahead, certainly I will keep this in mind to make sure that we address these questions as we go ahead. Sure. Yes, please. Anybody else? And Mehul from JK Fenner. Anything specific
Yes.
that you have in mind?
Hi Shiva, hi team
Hi.
members. To my experience, this is the first application which I'm coming across. So I look forward for a great learning in terms of the model framework of ML. And I would look forward to look into the OFIs very seriously, which I learned during this process and come across during my audit so that I can implement and take the HR stage of my company to a different level.
Sure. Mehul, you represent the corporate of JK Fenner, right?
Yes, absolutely, Shiva.
Okay. Sure. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yes, please. Anybody else? Any other insights?
Hi Shiva, good morning. This is Vivek from NTPC.
Yes, please.
Yeah, actually, I have been with NTPC for more than 15 years, but yes, the issue is I have not directly dealt with the business excellence model or assessment related activities. So please keep in mind that in your batch, there are people which don't have the background of BE model. And second, my expectation would be like, how HR framework will be linked to the business results.
Sure.
Because
Sure.
we need to have matrices which can directly link. We can first assess and then link to the final outcome of the business. Thank you.
Certainly, that will be addressed because business results are integral. Even though we are assessing HR excellence, the link to the business results will certainly be there. We will be discussing about it. And the other point, you can be rest assured that even though, NTPC follows that way, if we are looking at over here, all the people who are here are exposed to business excellence. One is NTPC, is also JK Fenner, and also our friend from Tata. So all of you know and you practice business excellence, but still I am going by the premise that all of you are attending this program for the first time. So there will not be any sort of shortcuts. I'm not taking anything for granted. I will be going through the same courseware in the same way that we would be dealing with all the other participants. Yeah.
Thanks, Shiva. Thanks very much.
Sure. So with this, shall we start then?
Yeah, good
we are
morning,
at around 10.
Shiva, if I can ask one thing.
Please, Amit, go ahead.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Just one expectation from my side, it would be that we had applied for this particular award last year also, and we were in the 500 to 600 range. So
Okay.
we will want to learn about the practices and what is the strength of the companies which figured in the 600 plus category last year. So that is something that we would want to learn during this five sessions.
So, but NTPC had applied as a whole organization, or any one of the units had applied?
As a whole organization.
Okay. Sure. We will discuss some of the points of that in terms of the perceived, the advantages, disadvantages, and how does it work when you apply as a group or when you apply as an individual or a whole organization. And I will also share some examples of the applicants also. Maybe that might give you some more insights. Certainly.
Yeah.
I'll make a note. Yeah, sure. So let me go back to the main slide. So just in case of any bandwidth or the other related issues, please do. I will just switch off my video. And in case of any problems, please do get in touch with Sumana or with Nagma so that they can call me. I have the mobile straight away in front of me. So
Sure, will do.
Yeah, because so far we have not had any such digital disruptions so far, with some redundant, with some element of backup also kept in place. But just in case if there is something, please do call Sumana or Nagma, and they will be able to help you out. We are at around 10:35 now. We will have a break at around 11:40 or so for around 10-15 minutes, and then we will have the second one. So that is also for planning your break, and also you can be rest assured that it won't be a continuous 3-hour drag. So with this, let me try to get into today's deliberations. First, as this slide says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So that way, NTPC has already taken quite a lot of steps towards its journey of excellence, more as a business excellence practitioner. So when we say business excellence, yes,
The
HR
slide is not showing Shiva. Shiva, I think the slide is not, we cannot see the slide.
Okay, let me. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
अब ठीक है ना?
Just not yet
You are able
started.
to see?
It is saying, it's okay now.
Okay, na? Sure.
Done.
Okay. Thanks for that. So I think NTPC is already on its way to excellence many years back. But then when we say business excellence, one of the challenge is business excellence is I would say it is a sum total of so many different areas of the business pitched together, because it talks about the business strategy, it talks about the function studies of an HR or a supply chain management, or probably something to do with the customers, to do with the society, etc. But the basic tenets or the principles, they still continue to be the same. So that way, I think many of you have already started your journey of excellence, but let us also try to see, as far as the HR excellence is concerned, to what is it, to what is the depth to which we have gone, and what is it that we can still do moving ahead. That is what is the point that probably will be a takeaway for all of you. And as we say, when you're looking at excellence, while I think milestones are certainly important, an award or a prize is also a testimony to the fact that yes, the organization has arrived and it is reckoned as a performer when we are trying to get ourselves calibrated with the best of best. Certainly, all these things are very much pertinent. But what we also need to look at is, when we say excellence, excellence is more for our own satisfaction rather than for the external world. The external world, whatever we are looking at excellence, is more only of a calibration. So unless and until excellence helps us, then there is no point in saying that yes, it is excellence for inside rather than excellence for outside. Why is it that even though I think all of us are as applicants, I'm sure that all of you will be looking forward to win the coveted award. That is fine. That is a very good aspiration. You must have absolutely no doubt on that. But please also remember that from CI, there is what we also say, that you need to measure yourself on the maturity. The award or the prize or something is just a milestone. And one of the challenges in the HR Excellence Award is, because it is a purely domain centric framework plus also an award. Even though we are getting into the 11th year of the HR Excellence Award, despite a few organizations having been able to cross that psychological threshold of that 600 that will get you the prize, but still the jury has a lot of questions for the ultimate, for the highest level, which is called as the role model leadership. That is where what the jury looks out for is, does this organization have a practice that the entire industry can actually pick up and emulate? So that is what distinguishes between a role model winner and a prize winner. So that's what later we will also try to share some of the questions that the jury always asks when it comes to the senior assessors who have assessed those 600 plus organizations, and what are some of the challenges they have faced in the way. And probably this could also provide some very interesting insights for you when you are trying to apply this year, maybe as a unit or as a whole organization, whatever, that is a choice that could be left to you. But however, we will try to touch upon all those points. Now, whenever we are trying to assess excellence, the first thing is, as I said, the definition of excellence. When we say excellence, since many of you have also been practitioners of business excellence, can you share as to, when you are wanting to define excellence, what would you define it as? What is it that, if you are an assessor going out and then looking out for excellence, what are some of the traits of excellence that you would want that organization to display? Either you can type it out in the chat box, or you can also open up your mic and share. What does excellence mean to you? You can type it out in the chat box. Or you can even open up your mics as well, not a problem. Okay, being better than yesterday, more than expectation. It's a continual learning process. Anything else? Achieving more than the standards fixed. Yes, that's right. Showcasing best practices from the industry, meaning to say that you are able to assimilate the best practices of the industry and also showcase that. That's what I'm assuming. Then about continuously reinventing ourselves. Yes, much more than the benchmark. It is also about agility. Implementation of the policy in its true spirit. So something to do with the execution excellence as well. Being better and being relevant. Yes. Integrated collection of proven best practices. The model is also a compendium of those proven best practices. Yes, you are right. Right. So with these, let us try to look at as to how to make use of all the points, whatever you have put in. One of the things, or probably shall I also share, there is one thing that all of you have missed out. What is it? There is one thing that is very conspicuously absent from all the points what all of you have typed out over here. Can you think of it? It is non-HR. Culture. Well, HR is all about culture, but something beyond that. I think Shubhadeep got it right. It's got to do with business results. Why is, whenever we are looking at excellence, one of the first things that we need to look at is whether is the organization sustainable. What I'm trying to say is whether it is HR excellence, whether it is business excellence, whether it is customer excellence, or even if we are to go into a little bit deeper in terms of maybe a knowledge management model, etc., which are all there. Any and every model in the world first looks at business results, because whatever you are wanting to do, you will continue to do only when you are a sustainable organization. Even though while we are assessing an HR excellence through an HR excellence model, what is more important is whether is the organization, is it successful? Will it continue to be there for today as well as tomorrow and in perpetuity? So when we are going to declare, or when an HR excellence winner is being declared, whether somebody goes beyond 600 or whether somebody is an award or a prize winner, whatever it is, the business results have to be positive. The top line as well as the bottom line, both of them need to be good. You can't say that all the HR processes, practices and the associated results are great, but the business results don't look great. And in that case, such an organization will fail to make the cut because of the reasons of sustainability. So financial results are the first barometer of excellence for any and every framework that is there today. Next, after that, one of you also asked about how do we look at the financial results from an HR angle. Now you will also see that you have been given the BPCL case study for that read, which we are going to make use of for doing the assessment. Even if you look at the BPCL case study, they have given you a few of the metrics, the financial metrics with a HR flavor. It talks about the profit per employee or the revenue per employee despite the manpower this thing going down. So what does it show? It is also trying to say that what is the contribution or what is the revenue per employee. So that is also a good financial result being given from an HR angle. And why? Because it is very important that all of you in HR are very privileged. The most of the HR people, they use a particular word called as an HR business partner. So it means that you must be able to talk in the language of the business. So HR cannot be isolated from the business. Now, please look at the word for, I don't know how it came into work, but I think it is really good because there is a lot of meaning in that word when you say an HR business partner. Nobody, if somebody is in operations or somebody is in supply chain, that particular word is not used in the, I would say, in the same way. Nobody has a designation called as a supply chain business partner or an operations business partner. No. I think all of you are privileged to be called as HR business partners. So that way, you must also be able to connect yourself much more stronger to the business, and whatever business results are there, if you are able to present it from an HR angle point of view, I think that would be great. So you have a few insights of that coming in from BPCL, and later let me also try to share a couple of other business results also with that, I would say, with the flair of HR, so that how is it that you can be able to present the HR link to the financial results, that will also become very, very clear. Now, just trying to look at the financial results is not the end of it. That is only one of the many requirements of excellence. In fact, the very next slide also talks about what we call as the contradictions of excellence. So one of the contradiction is excellence and financial success. As I said, financial success is a requirement and you have to be successful, financially successful as an organization. There is no two doubts about it. When it comes to the second one, I think quite a few have already typed it out in the question box, saying that you are wanting to be a learning organization, as well as, I think there was one word somebody had put in, where is it? It says achieving more than the standards fixed. I think that was what Indranil also shared over here. So when you are saying that achieving more than the standards fixed, whenever we are trying to look at excellence and compliance, there are two differences what you will need to look at. Many of you in HR might be doing HR audits. Audit is different, assessment is different. And we must be able to, whenever you are trying to do an assessment, you must be able to come out of the audit portion of it. Because we have a very strong legacy of audits. We have been more than 20 to 25 years with the management systems ever since the advent of the ISO 9001, way back in the early 90s. And after then we have had QMS, EMS, OSHAs, ISMS, whatnot. You've got all the standards of the world. So the difference between an audit and an assessment is that audit is always about compliance. It is about whether it is about a tick mark, whether are you doing something or whether are you not doing it. Are you doing it in the prescribed way or not? So audit is always binary, either a yes or a no. Confirm, in fact, it is called as a conformance to quality audit. So it means conformance to those systems or processes or procedures. So excellence is not conformance. It is about actually going beyond that conformance. So audit can be done by one. Excellence assessment has to be done by a minimum of two people. That is where you will always find assessment is never done by an individual. It is always done by a minimum of two people. So an excellence team, an excellence assessment team will always be in multiples of two. Either they will have 2, 4 or 6, depending upon the complexity of the site. Because one person can have a view, he can have a bias. But when there are two people, they don't, more or less, they don't think in a similar way. Each one will be entitled to his point of view. That is where in an assessment, the power of consensus or consensus is also required. You need to come to a common conclusion or an agreement on a particular issue. So excellence means that you are going beyond compliance. And one of the other testimony to the fact is, all of you would know that PDCA is something that all of us are very, very familiar with because of our association with the management system. The OPEL, what you are going to learn tomorrow, what we are going to take you through, the OPEL is at a much higher level than the PDCA. So it means OPEL is a tool that is used to assess excellence, whereas PDCA is a tool to assess compliance. So we are going a little bit beyond compliance. There are many attributes of excellence. We will share with you as we go ahead in this program as to what are those components of excellence that takes this beyond the PDCA. So for the moment, when we say excellence and compliance, and please also remember, even for a moment, I am not trying to bring down the requirement of a compliance management system. Compliance is the bedrock of excellence. If an organization does not subscribe to a compliance management framework, then its understanding of the PDCA will be very, very poor. If that is not there, then you cannot build excellence. Excellence is always built over a strong foundation of compliance. So compliance is the first port of call, then excellence. The third point is excellence and perfection. Just because an organization has been christened as a prize winner and an award winner, it doesn't mean that it is a perfect organization. It will have plenty of gaps. Worldwide, across any excellence framework on a 1,000-point scale, no organization has been able to at least cross more than 600 or 650, at least in the Indian environment, not more than 650. But in many of the global excellence frameworks, organizations have crossed somewhere around 700, but all said and done, there will still be a gap of somewhere close to 250 or 300. So there is always some way to go. And one of you also spoke about agility when I think Mehul spoke about a continuous learning process, and when Amit spoke about being better than yesterday. Just like how we are trying to improve, the entire world is also trying to improve. While we are running, but we continue to stay where we are unless and until we put another 1 or 2 steps much faster. Very similar to the Corona count what we have. Every day, while we are running in our fight against the virus, but we continue to stay in the same place. 6,000 get added at the same time, 6,000 get discharged. So while we are thinking that we are doing enough, but actually what we are doing is not really good enough. Because while we are running, we are continuing to stay where we are. So we still need to march ahead. So excellence, that is where I said the scores are something like a milestone. It is not an end in itself. You will still need to go beyond that. So as assessors, we must also try to also come to some sort of a conclusion that whenever we are getting into an organization, we must not go with the expectation that we are going to find a perfect organization. Perfection is something that just does not exist. It is something like a mirage which we are just trying to push and just follow on track. Because wearing the role of an assessor, wearing the hat of an assessor is also a challenge. Many a time, the assessor thinks, because he is a Panch Din Ka Sultan, he thinks that whatever he goes, whatever he sees, everything should be excellent. But unfortunately, organizations, as I said, don't adopt excellence models. Just by mere adoption of an excellence model, it doesn't mean that they become excellent. They still have to work. There is a lot of work that is also there in progress. There are a lot of new things that also keep cropping up. That is what is the challenge of that, continuously trying to be ahead of the curve, despite the VUCA world in which we are. And many a time in our obsession to find the perfect company, we might as well as erred in terms of not giving the due recognition to the company where it stands. Because we had fathomed that this organization mein ye hoga, wo hoga, it would have been over there. But then we have gone with probably too very high an expectation, and we were not able to do justice to the organization despite they trying to show many of the good practices. So as an assessor, you also need to be practical, you also need to be pragmatic. So do not have your hopes so very high that you are trying to go into an organization that is just about everything. And also on a lighter note, an assessor is also someone who may not have anything or may not have everything in his own organization, but when he goes out, he will expect that everything should be there, which cannot happen. So these are some contradictions of excellence. Just to recap this slide, financial excellence is a must when we are trying to assess excellence. Excellence has to go beyond compliance for sure. It must be built on the foundation of compliance, and excellence is not perfection. So if excellence is not this, then what is it that we need to look at? So in the next slide, what we are going to look at, we are going to describe some of the traits of excellence which the assessors would need to look in when they are walking into an applicant whom they are going to assess. First thing, one of the very first trait of an organization which is deemed to be excellent is it needs to demonstrate what we call as inclusive success. So what do you mean by the word inclusive? Can you just type it out in the chat box or maybe open your mics, please? What do you mean by the word inclusive? What does inclusive mean to you? All encompassing, taking all stakeholders together, involving all stakeholders without any bias. Okay. Anything specific to HR? Anything specific to HR? Organization and society, encompassing diversity. What else? Inclusive of all business and HR processes. Yes, you are right, Raman. Yes. Anything else? Holistic, not prejudiced in any manner. Good. Since many of you are all, I would say, core excellence practitioners, I think this, the understanding of the stakeholder comes out very, very clearly. But just to take it a little bit beyond, trying to walk through a little bit more into the model, when we say inclusive, and organizations, please look at it as an HR excellence assessment, not a business excellence assessment. Somewhere one of the challenge what we have also seen is many a time, because all of you are, I would say at least over here, be it JK Fenner or our friend from Tata's or from all of you at NTPC, since you are also following a business excellence model, the word stakeholder resonates very fast with all of you. But at the same time, you must also remember that this is a deep dive into HR practices. We are not doing a business assessment. While inclusiveness does mean taking everybody along with us, but it is more from an HR angle. When we say from an HR angle, let me try to take you to the model booklet itself so that it's a little bit easy. Just give me a moment. Let me try to share the model booklet. So I'm just trying to share the model booklet. Let me try to go straight away into the result portion of it so that we are able to see what is it that I'm trying to talk about inclusive. Now, I am referring to this page number 19 in the model booklet, which says customer, supplier, and societal perceptions on the organization's people can also be presented based on the business context. So when we say inclusive, what we are trying to look at in HR excellence is how is it that the organization's people are perceived by the external stakeholders, like it could be customers or it could be suppliers or it could be partners or also as the society. So that is what is inclusiveness. Inclusiveness, not from only that angle. It is mainly from the hat of how are the people of the organization perceived by the different stakeholders. Let me try to take a few examples. If let us say you get an opportunity to go out and assess an Amazon or a Flipkart. Now the person who comes and delivers the package to you, he might be a franchisee, but for you he is a representative of Amazon because you have ordered on Amazon and Amazon is delivering it. So any deficiency or whatever, right or wrong, it will always reflect on Amazon, which is doing the logistics. Like say you're going to an airport, you're walking through the Delhi or the Mumbai airport or whatever. The person who is handling the baggage is an outsized party. Similarly, maybe the taxi that you pick up on the curbside, etc., they are all freelancers who are just affiliated. Now what? No way they are not connected with that. But what do you say? You say that the experience in Bangalore airport was like this. The experience in Delhi airport was like, I did not like the way that maybe the airline staff spoke to me. The airline is a customer of the airport. But what you perceive is all those people belong to the Bangalore airport or to maybe the Mumbai or the Delhi airport. So the perception becomes very, very important. So that is what is the challenge when you are trying to look at assessing excellence in HR. When you say holistic, it means how the entire ecosystem would view your people plus as well as your own extended partners. And today here, the definition goes a little bit beyond this also. The definition of people in HR excellence has now changed. Definition of people earlier was only limited to on-role, off-role. If you remember the classical HR excellence definition many years back, we were only trying to talk about white collar and blue collar. And then later the outsourced employees also got added. Now it is no more that. Now along with the white collar, blue collar and the outsourced employees, there are a host of other people. There are consultants, there are interns, there are project assistants. There are people who come on a voluntary basis to work with the organization for many different reasons on certain small projects for a small period. All of them are working for you, for your organization. So even the processes that are impacting them and even the results that are associated with them, all of them come under the purview of people. So when you are supposed to demonstrate inclusive success, it is about all the stakeholders and also the people categories that are associated with the wide category of the different categories of people who are working for your benefit, for your organization. I'm just trying to say, let's say you are, maybe you have 3 or 4 people of Infosys who have been posted in your, I'm just trying to take one random example. It happens in many of the ITES companies or the others where the representative of a large IT company his seat is there in your company because you have got sizable number of business, so they have to put a resident engineer. He technically belongs to an Infosys or a Wipro or some other outsourced service provider. But for all practical purposes, he is working for you, he is working in your facility. Contract is a business generated linkage. But how humanly you treat him, how is it that he feels comfortable working for you, that also falls under the purview of inclusive. So when we are trying to look at inclusive success, how your people are perceived, plus how the different categories of people perceive being close to your organization, that is something that we look under the new definition. Now let's get into the second definition. What is the second definition? The second bullet talks about something to do with the comprehensiveness. Now what is comprehensiveness? The word comprehensive, what does the word comprehensive mean? Anybody in the chat, what does comprehensive mean? Okay, for the sake of time, let me try to elaborate in detail is what Mehul says. Anybody else would want to try? When we say comprehensive, it means it is all-encompassing. When we say all-encompassing, when we say all encompassing, it means that you can't, when you're saying excellence has to be widespread, it also has to be across a broad set of parameters. So across that broad set of parameters, at least you should have done justice to more than 70 or 80%. Obviously, excellence is not perfection. You can't do it for everything. Now, the needs and expectations of different categories of people or stakeholders will be different. So based on that, to what extent you have been able to do justice, that is what is that comprehensiveness. When somebody says in cricket that it was a comprehensive victory, what does it mean? Bowling, batting, fielding, in all the areas, somebody has been exceptional or somebody has done a good work. So same way, when we say comprehensive success, whether have you been able to succeed in majority of the areas or in many of the metrics that are associated with the needs and expectations of the stakeholders who are associated with the HR excellence, what we are trying to look at. That is what is the comprehensiveness portion of it. The third portion, the third one aspect is what we call as predictable success. Now, what is predictable? Predictable over here from an excellence perspective would mean that you are able to establish the cause and effect relationship. That is, results just cannot happen by themselves. Results should be caused by an enabling approach. That is where the model also touches upon or drives home the point of enablers are driving the results. Results cannot happen by themselves in isolation. So we must be able to see an enabling cause and effect relationship. You will see that much more in the OPEL pen wherein we get into the enabler OPEL as well as the result OPEL. The result OPEL specifically asks us to look at a cause and effect relationship. Next, the fourth one. When you say sustainable success would mean whether this success, whatever we achieved or whatever result we have been able to show, is it something like a flash in the pan or is it something that is sustainable? Sustainable would mean that we are able to showcase these results time and again. That is to do with the repeatability. That is what really speaks about the robustness of the process, whatever we have put in place. So that is also one of the strong reasons as to why the model will ask us to present 3 years of data. Meaning to say that that result is not a flash in the pan. It is something for which there is a very clear cause and effect relationship. And we have been able to achieve it time and again. That also demonstrates what we call as a semblance of a process management being in place, that results are accurate, they are reliable, they are timely, they are also being able to showcase it time and again. That shows an element of sustainability. So just to take the essence from these 2 slides, whenever you are trying to assess excellence, you need to look at, please look, these things will not be there in the model, but these are the basic building blocks or the understanding what we need to gain when we are trying to assess excellence in any organization. One is finances. The company should be able to sustain for today as well as tomorrow. Second thing is they must have been able to demonstrate going beyond the compliance framework. The third one is also about trying to do justice to all the categories of people, and also the aspect of trying to make sure that the perception of the external world about the organization's people is also good. And then we have been able to relatively be successful across many of those parameters which I would say mirror the needs and expectations. And all this should be caused because there is a strong enabling process in the backend. And we must have been able to showcase this time and again, showing the sustainability of the particular process. These are the things that are to be looked into if we are going to qualify an organization as an excellent organization. Now, let me also try to get into the question. Now, Amit says that would not the new definition lead to some unreasonable expectations? Not really, Amit. Why? Because when we are saying that the stakeholders perception of the people. Now, let's say I don't get the name over here. Let's see. We have one of our friend as a participant coming in from a BPO industry. Let me try to take their example. Sorry, I'm not able to get the name. Can you introduce yourself once more, please?
Priyanka.
Priyanka. Yeah, Priyanka. Oh, sorry, with this huge list of names, I was not able to get it right first time. My apologies for that.
No problem.
Now let's say I'm just trying to take an example from an industry. Now Priyanka is from the BPO industry. Now, even though many of their staffers, now many of these processes may also be outsourced. For example, Priyanka's company might be doing a job for a insurance company, they might be doing a job for an airline company, etc. But when we are speaking to the associates in Priyanka's company, for us, we do not know to whom the process has been outsourced to. For us, we truly believe when we are speaking to them, we are speaking to somebody from Jet Airways, or we are speaking to somebody from Vistara, or we are speaking to somebody from this particular life insurance company. That is what. So we look at them as extension of the organizations with whom we deal with. So that is where it becomes very important. But just Amit, one more point for your comfort. While we say that the stakeholders' perception is also important, the other stakeholders, we are in touch with the organization's people. But since it is an HR excellence model, majority of the weightage, even though we don't assign a particular mathematical weightage, but at least based on the business model of the organization, more than 50 to 60% of it would be for the organization's people. Depending upon the business model, then maybe if the organization is more to do with a customer facing one, in that particular case, maybe customers' perception would also be there. Like the weightage that we would give to Priyanka's organization vis-a-vis an NTPC would be different with respect to how customers perceive an employee or how the customers perceive this particular organization. There might be an organization which is heavily into supply chain or logistics. There, the customer's perception of the organization's people will become very, very important. There are certain businesses where the number of people who are on roles of the company or who constitute the HR of the company might be very less, because majority of the value addition might be happening in the supply chain. So it all depends upon different business models. So as assessors, we must try to look into, that is where understanding the organization will become very, very important. Understanding, see, when you are assessing HR excellence, don't think that you are a core HR person. That is where you are called as a business partner. You must try to understand the business, try to understand the business context, and what is the extent of interfacing with the different stakeholders, and to what extent you must consider them as a part of the HR ecosystem, and what is the relative weightage that you will need to give. So if 70% is for your people, maybe 15% might be for the customer, another 15% might be for the society. I'm just trying to take one more example for the sake of this clarity. Let's say you are in a company like Maruti Suzuki is applying for an assessment. Now, Maruti, if you are looking at, let's say it could be the Gurgaon or it could be the Manesar facility, there are hundreds and thousands of employees. Now, when let us say the shift gets completed at 2 o'clock or probably in the morning or probably late evenings, people should not start cursing Maruti, saying that kya yaar, look at this organization is a huge nuisance to the society or to the public bahar bhi ja nahi sakte. So that is not the sort of a thing. Or probably people blatantly violating the safety protocols, etc., because it is a conclusion of the shift and people are coming out in thousands of numbers. Then what happens if somebody is in uniform and the general public says, look at this company here, they have a scant regard for rules and regulations. Now that is what is the perception. Is the perception of the society that you are law abiding, or is it that are you reckless? So these are all the things that come up. For somebody who is into probably got sites in mining or who are into steel, etc., the community engagement becomes very, very important. How the community sees the organization's people, that becomes very important, because that is an enabler for the business. So there, that perception might be different. So whether you are assessing a BPO that is working out in the BKC complex in Mumbai, or whether you are assessing a company that is somewhere in Jamshedpur or probably somewhere in the remote place in Orissa, or whether you are assessing a core manufacturing organization that is there in the city, each one of them, they have their own, I would say, complexities. We'll have to look into and understand all this before we are trying to do the assessment. So that is where understanding of the context will become very, very important. So any questions over here? You can also unmute and you can also share your own perspectives.
Hi, Shiva. Talking
Yeah.
about inclusive success. Now, what I've generally seen is whenever we talk, so you talked about, how we can increase the sphere of how an organization is affecting, whether it is society or the environment around and everything. So what generally has been seen, so this word has been quite abused when it comes to, doing an assessment for a PSU, let's say, as compared to, no offense, but compared to a private sector. So, we try and enlarge the impact of it moment we call about inclusive. So you should be affecting, society and by and large, and then we keep on, increasing the sphere of that. While in the cases of, where do I, how do I point out that this is where it ends? Like I can go on, like you gave an example of that airport. So even the cab operators standing outside, they do affect your business and they do affect your perception about your processes. So correct, but where do I put a boundary to it? Like how do you decide? Okay, so this is now going way beyond. So this is something that has always been a problem whenever we're talking about business excellence model, or whenever that the assessors have a tendency to be really, really brutal when it comes to a public sector or a government organization, because they want to enlarge that sphere a lot, and as compared to when we talk about any private organization. So how do I judge? How do I judge it? Yeah.
So let me answer that question. See, it is all about how we have understood the context and to what extent we have gone. Like there was a particular case study that we were using a couple of years back for HR excellence. Now, in one of the sections, just because the word inclusive had dropped in, there were close to around 10 to 12 pages on diversity and inclusion. Now, you are not trying to talk about HR, you are only trying to talk about one process and you have given so much. When you said society, no, we are not doing a CSR assessment. Many of the applicants, as soon as, I'm not again trying to make a distinction between public and private, because I see so many positives in the public sector that many private organizations would not have. Similarly, vice versa, there are, I will not say pros and cons, it is all about understanding the context. So incidentally, it is quite possible that for reasons of legacy or whatever, many HR people might also be driving CSR. Many a time the document in many of the places, it tends to have a CSR flavor. Then we are shooting ourselves in our own foot. So then there is no way that, we can expect scores when we are trying to write something about CSR, because that is very passionate. So what we need to do and look at is what is the justice, what we are doing for this assessment, wherein we are required to look at our HR practices. Now, CSR, it is only asking what is the perception of your people by the society. It is not asking anything about CSR. Many people just go hammer and tongs seeing that particular word. What is required over is, in an HR excellence model, what is asked is only what is the people involvement in the community activities. People involvement, we are not asking about anything else. Many a time that tends to be taken too very far, and that's where many applicants, really go the wrong way. And even when the site visit happens, many a time the person who is presenting goes beyond whatever is required, and the assessor is unable to appreciate that because the time is also lost in trying to explain what is it that we are doing on CSR, which was actually not required in an HR assessment. So we also, as assessors and as applicants also, we need to know that our passions should not run amok. We need to have focus on what is the assessment, what is the criterion, and of course, even in every refresher program that we do, we always keep telling our assessors as well as the applicants, because the applicant and the assessor community is the same in HR excellence, that you need to focus on what is the intent of the criteria. Don't go by just what the applicant has written, or don't go by just because you have done it in your organization, you are expecting somebody else to do it. That is what is that element of bias. Once we are able to clear these cobwebs, then I think the assessment goes on in the right direction.
Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
So I think Vijay Lakshmi and Jayaprakash say that the audio is weak.
No, it's
What for the others?
pretty
No,
clear
it's
to me.
clear. I think for the others, because I am hearing it very clear.
I'm also hearing it very clear.
Sure. Maybe I think some connectivity issues somewhere. Fair enough. So let us try to go a little bit ahead now. Now here, when we say this is just a visual of a slide of one of the visuals that we were using from BCG and McKinsey when they did a survey. But don't go too much into this visual. But what is the most important one, what I am trying to put across over here as a key thing is, if you look at whenever you replace the word world class, you replace the word class with the word high maturity. If we are trying to look at a high maturity organization, what we need is a good, I would say, equal focus in terms of the practices as well as a good focus on the performance. Both of them are required, I would say, in equal weightage rather than only one of them. So only saying that I have the best practices in the world without being able to show the results, then obviously you are not a high maturity organization. So both practices as well as results, both of them should go hand in hand, because this model is about both the process as well as the result maturity. So processes and results, both of them need to go in hand in hand. If, for example, the results are very good, if the processes are not so very great, then it means that maybe there is something wrong, or maybe the business model is skewed over here, or for whatever reason we are saying that the results all show a great thing, but the processes are not. So it means that the results are not trustworthy. Maybe the integrity of the results need to be questioned. So as an assessor, what you must look at is the balance, what you are able to see between both the results as well as the processes. Both of them need to go hand in hand. That is when we will be able to see a real good organization with high maturity practices. That is what we are ideally looking at when we are trying to uncover the maturity practices as such. But just to, if you are thinking what are all these words, these are words that are used in the boxing terminology. Punch bag in a boxing terminology means that somebody who does not last the entire bout. Neither is he a performer, neither does he have a practice. Like when you say Tyson is somebody who had successful records to his credit, which showed an element of performance. At the same time, his technique was also good. That is what is practice. Like we are trying to take the example of Dhoni. Dhoni was a true world-class cricketer because his performances spoke for himself. And even though he had an unconventional practice in terms of his ability, in terms of batting, etc., but it was pretty consistent. He was still able to produce that. So it was that the good, I would say, mix between his performance plus as well as the practices, which really propelled him to become a sort of a world-class cricketer. The same analogy holds good even when we are trying to look at an organization. So that was something about this particular slide. Next, I think one of you were asking what was the difference between business excellence and HR excellence? How do we actually take it out, etc. So I don't know if many of you in NTPC have been exposed to the new model or not. All these days, I think even your NTPC business excellence model was more, I would say, aligned to the previous model of EFQM, which was the 2013 model. This is a new the business excellence model, wherein there have been lot of major changes that was released in the year 2019. So when we say business excellence is a aggregation of, it could be leadership, business strategy, it is HR, finance, IT, technology, customer, marketing, this, that, everything is all together. So why did HR excellence come into practice in 2010? Mainly because our intention was business excellence was not going the way that we intended it to scale up. Because people were thinking that it is too very complex. It is too very intimidating. So that was when the think tank decided that let us try to break the business excellence into some smaller modules. One is on HR, one is on maybe something on customer centricity, another could be on some other domain, another could be on operations. So when somebody is good in operations, somebody is good in HR, somebody is good in customer management, then all the building blocks are all there. Then it is much more easier to assimilate the entire business into it. So that was the reason for the HR excellence to be born in the year 2010. At the same time, those days, IR was still an issue. So due to which it certainly required an element of focus. So that was also considered by the committee those days when the HR excellence model was brought into practice. Just to look at it, the benefits of business excellence, if you are looking at, it has got a focus towards customers, towards strategy, towards operation, quality, development, NPD. You talk about any and every stakeholder, everybody is there. So obviously here we are trying to talk about people excellence. But the irony is, if you are looking at customer satisfaction has gone by 30 to 40, cost reduction by 25 to 40, something else by 40. But the challenge is the lowest one has always been in HR. And believe me, it is not so very easy dealing with people. Our analysis or our study says, despite many of them winning the Business Excellence Award, wherein they were able to cross that 600, the lowest score by most of the winners on a Pareto was still on HR. While many of them had a higher score in operations, many of them had a higher score in terms of the customer focus, the people area was always the lowest. That also shows what are the challenges that are associated with running HR and with people needs and expectations that keep on changing. So that was also one of the reasons as to why an HR excellence model came into picture in the year 2010. So that was the genesis. And ever since then, we have slowly gone about trying to enhance or take the level of the model to the next plane. And that is where today we are there in the 2019 model, which has seen the third, I would say, a major change or a shift in terms of the content, in terms of the quality, and also trying to make it much more comprehensive. So with this, let us try to start getting a little bit deeper into the HR excellence model. So I think incidentally we are at 11:30. So I think there might be a break in terms of the continuity. So it is 2 minutes to 11:30. So shall we take a small break and then come back at 11:40, 12 minutes from now?
Sure.
Because there would be a discontinuity, because I would at least need around easily another 20 minutes to give an overview of the model. Or if you're okay, we can take that and then take a break at 11:40. I will leave it to you, whichever is comfortable to all of you.
You decide,
Well,
Shiva.
Sorry?
You can
I
decide,
decide?
Shiva. Nobody is answering.
ठीक है, चलिए, we will take a break. We will come back at 11:40 then. Take a 10-minute break.